This week, the thoughts of one brother just 3 months after we dropped the nuclear bomb. What did it mean for Freemasonry, and what does he have to say about the power of truth? Then, an all-new Masonic Minute. That's right, illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison is back once more to tell the story of Lucinda Morgan Smith? Yeah, it's a little crazy. You're going to want to check this one out. Finally, we'll wrap it up with an all-new piece with a first look at it in the upcoming edition of the Lyceum, the Grand Lodge of Illinois' educational magazine that comes out every month. Brother Darren A. Laners had something to say about social and Masonic apathy and the ultimate price we might pay if we can't kick it to the curb. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 682. I want to thank you all for joining me this week. If you are somebody who has joined us from time immemorial, all the way back in 2011 when we started this podcast, I want to say thank you so much for sticking with us through all of the years, all the episodes, and on into the future. If you're out there thinking, hey, how can I help support this awesome program for Masonic education, one of the most trusted sources in Masonic education out there today, head on over to wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out how you can assist us in the production of this show. Thanks very much to our past and present contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners. You guys make this whole thing possible. Even if you'd like to make a one-time gift, even $1 helps. You can do that right there on our website. We also have a shop where we sell our limited edition producer's pin. Lets everybody know that you support quality Masonic education. I do some handmade, bespoke leather goods, including keychains that I make for lodges and officers. Very popular gift. If you'd like some great reading, some amazing texts that I have been in love with for the entire time that I've been somebody who is a student of philosophy, has of course been Heindel's Ancient and Modern Initiation, which I went ahead and did a special edition of this book, republished it, let the original artwork for the original book and how it was published shine through in the new cover art, and of course it has additional content including prologue and epilogue, which I have authored. The rest of the book is there unchanged in its original state, but of course with modern typesetting and things, so it's a really great read. You can see what people have to say about it on the website also under the shop. If you order from the shop, you'll get that autographed. It'll come straight from me to you, all wrapped up and ready to go. The same is true with The Master's Word, a short treatise on the Word, the Light, and the Self. It is a print edition where you'll get that autographed as well. I did the same thing with this book, except I did it with one of my writing partners, John Ruark of the Masonic Roundtable. And not only did we do an epilogue and prologue for this, we also did annotations throughout. It is a very popular book. If you're a fan of this particular book, this is the edition to get. It is the definitive edition. Why that is? Well, originally, this book was published, and now you can find it some places like Abe Books and things for upwards of, in some cases, $600. This one cost you $20. It is the exact original print. It is not a facsimile reprint. We have taken it, retypeset it, annotated it, all that, and it's yours for $20. So you can grab that. It's also available on Amazon, Kindle, and hardcover as well. You can check out the links there on our website. And last but not least, How to Charter a Lodge, a no-nonsense, unsanctioned guide. I get a lot of people who ask me, you say, hey, every single week on the Masonic Roundtable, you say you're from Space Novum 1183, the premier education lodge in the state of Illinois. That's right. How did we start it? Basically, this book is how we started Space Novum. And there have been no less than 6 lodges that I know of already who have used this as a blueprint to start a new lodge, and that's just the ones I know of. We've also got It's Business Time, Adapting a Corporate Path for Freemasonry, which again you can get straight away from either Amazon or myself, and that's another one we did with John Ruark, so really appreciate you guys checking it out. Now, on to the program. This week, really excited, we'll get into a Masonic Minute segment, which is very time apropos as it deals with the Morgan affair and the release of the Masonic runaway bestseller, The Imperfect Storm, by Stephen L. Harrison. The first piece I have is called The Mighty Atom by Harry E. Grant, 32nd degree, KCCH, San Carlos, California. Originally published in the November-December 1945 edition of the New Age magazine, an official organ of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree, ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry for the southern jurisdiction in these United States of America. Man, in his endeavor to destroy fear, has developed a new form of frightful destructiveness, the atomic bomb. Assuming the role of destroyer, man is himself threatened with self-destruction, and a new fear of the power of the mighty atom, has become his immediate impulsion toward a warless peace. The mighty atom, the smallest hypothetical particle into which matter can be divided and still retain its identity, has, and particularly as to one element, uranium, which comparatively modern dictionaries will now incorrectly inform you has no important uses, through an intensive application of collective destructive thought become the power by which men endeavor immediately to order their lives. Man bows in submission to a misused power of his own infliction, which he now fears he cannot control. Men continue to be their own worst enemies. The minutest particle of matter has become the mighty atom, but man must hold fast to fundamentals, to the unassailable fact that this new destructiveness, the atomic bomb, is not the almighty atom. Men who have refused to allow their lives to be guided by and controlled by principle, who were not brought to love peace because of its sovereign might and harmony and fearlessness, and that it was and is forever right, are now brought to an advocacy of peace, because and only because they are afraid of present non-defense against the power of the mighty atom, thought civilization, threatened momentarily with destruction by the smallest particle of matter, of that which does not think. Almost they are persuaded that the power of the mighty atom is superior to the almightiness, the omnipotence of God. Defense against the Frankensteins of man's creating has been and remains the forever principle, the peace, the truth, the usefulness, the love, and the many other things that the vast majority of thinking men desire manifested in their own lives and in the lives of their posterity, and which, in total, they strive, even though afar off, to know as God. The minute, though mightily powerful, the atom will never have lasting dominion over omnipresent and almighty God. Man has a defense against every form of evil, and men must learn to love peace, not through fear of world destruction by the forces unleashed from within the tiny atom, but because peace is the gift and a manifestation of the omniscience of the All-Father. Basically, the real defense against destructively applied atomic energy is an unselfishness on the part of all men and the courage to accomplish in accordance with their convictions. Prevention is the best cure against destruction of civilization, and the means for preservation are available for utilization until the 11th hour. But why await the deadline? World government by principle is the authority that must be recognized and utilized to ensure peace. Perpetual peace is possible. Let us then have peace without any fear, because peace, perfect peace, is the gift of God. The piece ends with a short poem by A.L. Murray, 32nd degree. One clear, brave mind can find truths that lie lost under the rubble of men's fears, and lift them high to a place in the sky, to light men's souls through eternal years. Well, there you have this short piece, penned in 1945 for context, about the atom. Essentially, 3 months after we bombed Hiroshima in Japan with the atomic bomb. What I find interesting here is a concept that came into my vernacular in the 1980s growing up, hiding under our desks and things when they talked about earthquakes or potential nuclear fallout. Right? We were in the midst of still in the Cold War, the race of arms with Russia and all of these things, and it was wild. And the term that I'm talking about is MAD, or mutually assured destruction, meaning that the only thing stopping us from using nuclear technology is the threat that others will use them on us and everyone loses. Is it worth that risk? Certainly Brother Harry Grant has had something to say just 3 months after recognizing it for what it is. Obey because we have the biggest gun, right? Why do we fail to see the power of peace Are they somehow unable to be compared on the same level? Is it apples to oranges? Is power of a weapon and power of peace not able to be showcased side by side? Or is it just our limited thinking that doesn't allow us to do this? I think as Masons, we are uniquely qualified to lend our ideas and thoughts about this matter to the conversation. I look forward to hearing or reading your thoughts as they pop up on the Facebook group or in the commentary under the social media postings on this episode. Now, let's get into this special Masonic Minute with illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison.
As many of you know, I recently wrote a book called The Imperfect Storm, with new revelations about the infamous William Morgan affair. I hope you'll check it out. The Morgan affair has been a curse, hanging like the sword of Damocles over Freemasonry for 2 centuries. It's a subject that just won't go away, but even after all that time, there remain some interesting aspects to explore. One of those crops up from time to time after I've given a presentation about Morgan. The question comes right out of left field. "Steve," they ask, "after Morgan disappeared, did his wife marry Joseph Smith?" Yeah, that Joseph Smith, the guy who founded the Mormon religion. The answer to that question is controversial, confusing, and complicated. While doing research for The Imperfect Storm, I ran into documents that told what may have actually happened. It turns out Morgan's wife's story is just about as weird as his. So let's explore the life of Lucinda Pendleton Morgan Harris Smith. Lucinda Pendleton was born on September 27, 1801. Against her father's wishes, she married William Morgan October 7, 1819, in Richmond, Virginia. In the ensuing years, while Morgan struggled to find work, the couple moved to the Toronto area, then Rochester, and finally Batavia, New York. The couple had 3 children: Harriet, born in 1822, who died as an infant, Lucinda, born in 1824, and Thomas, born in 1825. After Morgan disappeared, area Freemasons attacked the marriage like a school of hungry piranhas. They claimed Morgan, aged 45 at the time, had robbed the cradle, abducting a 16-year-old girl from her home and causing her father to die of a broken heart. If it makes a difference, Lucinda was 18 at the time, not 16. Masons claimed Morgan frequently beat and mentally mistreated her. They even attacked Lucinda herself, making accusations about her moral character that, in the words of author William Leete Stone, were as cruel as the grave. Most of this was likely not true. Based on Lucinda's affidavits and testimony, her concerned reaction and frantic search for the missing Morgan, and her disdain for the Freemasons, refusing to accept their financial assistance. 4 years after Morgan went missing, Lucinda married his former friend and supporter, George Washington Harris. Again, the Masons were quick with their accusations, charging her with adultery, since they claimed she knew Morgan was still alive. Meanwhile, back at the spiritual ranch, at about the same time and in roughly the same area, a guy named Joseph Smith, guided by an angel, took possession of a set of golden plates, translating their contents into the Book of Mormon. There is no evidence clearly indicating when Lucinda met Joseph Smith. He began his seminal work on Mormonism and in 1830 completed work on the Book of Mormon in Palmyra, New York, some 60 miles from Batavia. Having organized the church that same year in Fayette, New York, Smith moved his operations to Kirtland, Ohio, where he established the first Mormon temple in 1831. In those days, that journey would have doubtless taken him through Batavia, where he may have met Lucinda right around the time she married George Harris. Such a meeting may have sparked Lucinda's interest in the Mormon faith, but it was another 4 years until she and George became Mormons after they had moved to Terre Haute, Indiana. Based on a divine revelation in 1831, Joseph Smith declared Independence, Missouri to be the location of Zion, prompting him to establish a church there. Mormon followers flocked to the new location, prompting significant tensions with the native residents. Given this friction, the Mormons moved their settlement to the town of Far West, Missouri, in a sparsely populated area of Caldwell County. In 1838, Lucinda and George joined that community. If Lucinda Morgan Harris and Joseph Smith had not met prior to that time, they certainly met then, since Smith and his family moved in with Lucinda and George. Smith wrote, "On the 14th of March, as we were entering Far West, we were received under the hospitable roof of Brother George W. Harris, treated with all possible kindness, and refreshed ourselves with much satisfaction." Their stay together was short-lived. That same year, animosity escalated into violence, leading to the Mormon War. On October 27th, Missouri Governor Lilburn Boggs issued an executive order saying the Mormons should be driven from the state and declaring their outrages are beyond all description. Smith was arrested. After his release the following year, the Mormons, including Lucinda and her husband, moved to Commerce, Illinois, which Smith renamed Nauvoo. Amidst all this, there is speculation that Lucinda and Smith carried on a long-term love affair. Many years later, Sarah Pratt, a good friend of Lucinda, related her story, saying Smith had made advances toward her. Distraught, she went to Lucinda to, in her words, unbosom her grief. To her astonishment, Lucinda laughed, called her foolish, and said, "I don't see anything so horrible in it. I've been his mistress for 4 years." During that time, there certainly was ample opportunity for Joseph and Lucinda to be alone together, since in July 1840, her husband George was, perhaps conveniently, sent on a 14-month mission to the eastern states. Even after George's return, Smith and Lucinda were seen together without him. Joseph Smith had enemies. On June 27, 1844, many of them banded together in a mob that killed both Joseph and his brother Hiram. B.W. Richmond, an acquaintance of Smith and a non-Mormon, was visiting Nauvoo at the time. He attended Smith's funeral procession and made the following observation in a Chicago Times article. While Smith's 2 wives were bewailing their loss and prostrate on the floor with their 8 children, I noticed a lady standing at the head of Joseph Smith's body, her face covered and her whole frame convulsed with weeping. She was the widow of William Morgan, now the wife of Mr. Harris. From this, contemporary historian Todd Compton concluded in his book Sacred Loneliness, Lucinda Harris was crying over the body of her husband, Joseph Smith, just as she had her first husband, William Morgan. In other words, Compton assumes a body found at Oak Orchard Creek in 1827 was Morgan's. This is most likely not true. Additionally, there are simply no records of a traditional, or shall we say earthly, marriage between Joseph and Lucinda. However, the Mormons have a more sacred form of uniting a couple: sealing, or eternal marriage. In what one might regard as, at best, a strange ceremony, documents show on January 2nd, 1846, at 6:28 a.m., none other than Brigham Young sealed Lucinda Pendleton Harris and Joseph Smith, quote, for time and all eternity, in the Nauvoo Temple. Smith had been dead for 18 months, so Lucinda's husband, George, served as a proxy for Smith. Following that, Young sealed Lucinda, now called Lucinda Smith, and George Harris as husband and wife, not for eternity, but for a time. That time, by eternal standards, was short. In 1853, Lucinda legally abandoned Harris without cause. 3 years later, George filed for divorce, claiming desertion. Harris died in 1860. In the interim since the divorce, the Utah Latter-day Saints Church excommunicated George Harris due to inactivity. After her divorce became official, Lucinda moved to Memphis and lived at the home of her and William Morgan's daughter, Lucinda Wesley Morgan Smith. Questionable records indicate she may have worked as a nurse. She died in 1856 at the age of 55. Her story did not end there. On April 4th, 1899, at the Salt Lake Temple, the Mormon Church once again sealed Lucinda and Joseph Smith. No one knows the reason for the second sealing, but in the eyes of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith Jr. and Lucinda Pendleton Morgan Harris Smith are twice forever sealed. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
All right, how incredible is that? I mean, if we were perhaps not following along intently, you might have been confused. I mean, it gets a little convoluted with who knows who and when they met, but thanks to Stephen L. Harrison, we have a much clearer picture of what happened. And what's really crazy is that here in the state of Illinois, many brothers know this sort of pop culture, did you know the Mormons used to be here and they were practicing something in Nauvoo and they had a Masonic temple and they kicked them out and all this. And some guys know that Smith married Morgan's wife, but nobody knows the deeper story, which I think is told here, and at least in this Masonic Minute, you get a much better picture of what's happening. The book Steve mentioned is phenomenal. We had Steve on the program just a few weeks back, episode number 675, Steve Harrison's The Imperfect Storm, in which we had an extended interview with Brother Harrison about the book and his findings. It is a phenomenal read. I encourage you to check it out. You can find a link to his book in the show notes for that episode and in this episode as well. Thanks one more time to illustrious Brother Harrison for this excellent segment, always keeping us one step ahead in what seems to be in vogue Masonic topics. The next piece I have for you this week is a preemptive strike. No, not really, but maybe. So this month for the Lyceum, what is that? It is the publication of the Committee on Masonic Education for the Grand Lodge of Illinois. The Education Committee puts together a monthly education magazine / newsletter that comes out in the form of a PDF magazine, which is sent to every single member in the Grand Lodge of Illinois with a valid email address. We've been doing this for a few years now. It has a huge love with brethren all around the world because it is PDF. It does get around. This month, we centered on a theme of brotherly love. And we had carefully curated and written articles about this. In one article, which is an original article by committee member Darren A. Laners. You may know him from the Meet, Act, and Part podcast, the Midnight Freemasons, and yes, the Lyceum. For this particular issue, he wrote something that I found very pertinent and needed to be shared beyond the magazine and also to promote the magazine. If you're curious on where to read it, you can find it online on the Grand Lodge of Illinois' website, ilmason.org/Masonic-Education, or you can also find it on the Illinois Lodge of Research website under the tab for Grand Lodge Education. This piece is called Brotherly Love Must Prevail Over Social Apathy by Worshipful Brother Darren A. Laners, Committee on Masonic Education, Illinois. Robert Putnam's seminal work, Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community, was first published in the year 2000. Bowling Alone essentially states that the glue that holds communities together comes not from the formal institutions of local government, but rather from the social ties formed in churches, bowling leagues, and community organizations such as the Elks, PTA, or the Freemasons. These social ties are what Putnam calls social capital. However, no one wants to address the elephant in the room. The fact of the matter is that Freemasonry and other community organizations do not appeal to modern society because of social apathy. Social apathy is defined as a pervasive phenomenon in contemporary societies that refers to the lack of interest, concern, or empathy regarding social issues and the well-being of others. Examining Freemasonry and what it has to offer, it is clear to see why we are having issues getting men to join the lodge and getting members to be engaged in our lodges. While we have been told that Freemasonry is a peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols, isn't it something more? I would argue that Freemasonry is a philosophical system that teaches a system of egalitarian governance within the lodge and stresses moral, spiritual, and intellectual self-improvement for its members, in service to God, which in turn enables them to contribute to the betterment of their communities. What happens when the majority of our members and potential members are bombarded with narratives in the media that tell them that the values that we hold are contrary to what they should believe? Allow me to explain. When we look at the three graces, faith, hope, and charity, we must understand that charity does not mean being charitable. It has the profound meaning of agape. Agape is a Greek word and equates to the highest form of love, charity. Agape is brotherly love. Due to a mistranslation in the King James Bible from the Greek, in 1 Corinthians 13, we have substituted charity in place of brotherly love. Reading the passage, however, which should be familiar to Freemasons, we see what happens when we replace charity with brotherly love. Quote, "So faith, hope, brotherly love remain. These three, but the greatest of these is brotherly love." How nicely this ties in with our tenets of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Brotherly love does not just apply to your Masonic brothers. We are taught in the first degree that brotherly love applies to everyone, that we should regard the whole human species as one family, as created by the great architect, that as we are inhabitants of one planet, we should aid, support, and protect each other. Masonic relief should apply to everyone less fortunate than us. The truth we seek should be derived from the volumes of sacred law. We can see how contrary the above tenets are to societal narratives. It is fair to say that the substantial percentage of society does not care about anything outside of themselves. This social apathy is the result of a widespread narcissism that has taken hold in modern society. We live in a society that promotes preoccupation with the self, where individuals feed their need for excessive admiration and approval from others via social media. Combine the narcissistic tendencies of modern society with the social media algorithms or other media that are consumed, and that media reinforce the values of the individual's echo chamber. We can see that many of these values are antithetical to our tenets, and the common narrative of these values are that sectarian tribalism is to be embraced, that we are to be divided against each other, that the other is not my friend, they are my enemy, that the human species is not one family, that the planet should serve humanity instead of humanity serving the planet, that the truth is what we tell you it is, that the golden rule can be broken, that the God I worship is better than the one that you worship. Make no mistake that the above narratives are being pushed because they divide society and allow the darkness of ignorance to gain footholds. Those pushing the division are doing so to keep the majority in society from uniting against them, a minority that controls and hoards power and wealth, like King Croesus, a name that should be familiar to NMJ Scottish Rite Masons. It is my sincerest belief that as we see technology further isolate us from one another, Freemasonry must be at the forefront of uniting communities, that we must disperse our light through both our actions and words to fight against division, that we must not only act with brotherly love in the world of the profane, but that we must actively promote it, that we must idealize those 6 words at the end of our Pledge of Allegiance that we use to open our meetings, with liberty and justice for all, that the all implies to all of humanity, that brotherly love must prevail against social apathy. The only way that brotherly love will prevail is for each Freemason to embrace it as a core concept, that every moral and social cementing us means that we are inculcating ourselves with Masonic lessons, and we are exemplifying these lessons with not just the brothers in our lodges, but the world in general. We must labor in the quarries of our communities. We must show our communities why Freemasonry is important. We must use Masonic education as a tool to improve not only ourselves, but the profane world. We must not fall into the traps of sectarian division. Now more than ever, Freemasonry must show the world a better way to think and act. We must disperse Masonic light because we are willing to rise above the madness of this world and to exemplify the way to behave with brotherly love and relief toward our neighbor, regardless of how they differ from us. We must show the world what truth is. In being true to the lessons imparted by the volumes of sacred law, that we must treat others as we ourselves would want to be treated. We must realize that we all have the Logos inside of us, reinforced when we are brought to light in our degrees, that the breath of God, the Word, the essence of God's being was put inside each of us, becoming our immortal souls, that each of us is tasked with a noble and glorious purpose to love and serve God and each other, that our mission as Freemasons is to show the world how to act with brotherly love, relief, and truth, that brotherly love is not just a Masonic catchphrase, but it is a state of being, that relief is not just something we write a check for, it is brotherly love in action, that truth is not what the media tells us it is, but rather that it is the divine truth of God. I leave you with the words of Worshipful Brother Benjamin Franklin. Quote, "Here is my creed. I believe in one God, creator of the universe, that he governs the world by his providence, that he ought to be worshipped, that the most acceptable service we can render him is doing good to his other children, that the soul of man is immortal and will be treated with justice in another life, respecting its conduct in this. These I take to be fundamental principles of all sound religion, and I regard them as you do, in whatever sect I meet them." End quote. Take due notice, and govern yourselves accordingly. Darren A. Laners. I cannot thank Brother Darren enough for putting this, I would say, pen to paper, but in this case, fingers to keyboard. But this is a great piece, and I really appreciate the sentiment. It drives home our mission and what's at stake if we as Masons don't do our job. And our job is to ever walk and act as such, as Freemasons. By ignoring our charges and our obligations as Masons, one might say we're acting at the highest level of not only incompetence, but hypocrisy. I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners one more time for all the assistance in producing this podcast. If you're curious on how you can help support the WCY podcast, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com, click on Support the Show or the shop, or check out any one of our other projects like Skull and Crown Limited or the Masonic Legacy Society, the Civic Freemason. Get a tarot reading by yours truly. That's right, I do guided readings past, present, future, intuitive guided sessions. All of those things come right back into the program. All funds raised through this endeavor go right back into the great work, and that's how I try to give back. So, with that, I hope to see you out in the wild, and until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Well, you guys beat me as no.